Our show is called Woman on Fire. It's an explosive one-woman show that explores the suffrage cause in the UK through the eyes and life of an unsung suffragette, Edith Rigby from Preston in Lancashire. She was friends with Emmeline and Christabel Pankhurst, so there's great Manchester connections there as well. And it gets the audience to consider how far they might go to pursue something that they really believed in.
It was about 20 years ago, two young women came to see one of my other plays in Preston, that's where I'm from, and they said, "You should write a play about Edith Rigby." And I said, "Who's she?" They said, "Oh, she's this amazing suffragette. You know, she set fire to this rich man's house, she did this and she did that." And I said, "That sounds like a great idea." And then I completely forgot about it for 20 odd years. I'm a long-time supporter of women's rights, and I wanted to write something that would inspire women. And when I read Edith's story and the suffragettes, it inspired me to write the play. She's an amazing woman, but it's not just about Edith, it's about other women in the movement. And it takes you from Preston to Glasgow to London. So it's, for a one-woman show, it's pretty amazing. And women have been saying to me that it is inspiring to them, so it's worked, yeah.
I think one of the things there's a great relevance today. It's not a historical piece set in the past. If we look at the aftermath of the Me Too movement, and we're looking at a 50-50 parliament and equal rights for women, it raises a lot of questions.
It's still relevant.
And also, I find it inspiring to play Edith, but also to know about what these women did over 100 years ago. It's only just over 100 years since some women won the right to vote. And what they went through to get us the right to vote is absolutely incredible. Yeah. And so many people have said,
I don't know if happened.
I didn't know they did that, because they tend to think, especially then, women were treated, you know, there was a place for women and you ought to stay there, and so many of them broke the mould, and they were in pitched battles with the police. They were away from home for a long time, and they were really, really up against it. And Edith in particular is quite a funny character. She has a tendency to use food items as part of her protest. So she threw sausages at
Keir Hardie, the Labour leader, and that's like throwing sausages at God to Labour people. You know, he's a god to them.
Yes.
But she was disgusted with the way the Labour Party were dragging their heels over getting votes for women. So she turned up at Manchester Free Trade Hall and threw these sausages, and they hit him in the face. And so she was expelled from the Labour Party. Yeah. So she's a very, very unusual woman for the time.
Yeah. And lots of people have said, I don't know if I could have done that, or even that they could go through that today for women's rights. So I think it's great to use the past to help the present in that sense, to remind us of the journeys of women before. And we look at history, but this is all about her story, and that's something that we think is well worth celebrating.
Yeah, I'm always pleased when you get young women coming round about voting age, which maybe just coming up to voting age, and for them to see it, to understand how that was reached for them, how women won the vote and what they had to do to win it. She was a doctor's wife, rich sort of middle class woman. Many of them were, but not all. There's a myth that they were all upper class ladies and waving their umbrellas, but it simply wasn't the case. There are thousands of working class women joined the movement.
But also I think just because Edith was a middle class woman, it was just as difficult for her to get involved in the campaign, because she had to jettison everything that was expected of her. Her husband, she'd disappear for months and he'd have no idea where she was, and he'd be left looking after their little boy. So there were lots of things that she challenged. Also in Preston we had a tobacco factory where young girls, mainly girls and women, were working, and there was no ventilation there. So there were breathing problems, and Edith asked them to provide ventilation for the workers, and they said no. So what she did was she went to the cooperative, who were the biggest orderers from that tobacco factory, and got them to stop their order until ventilation had been put into the factory. So she did lots of really good things, in terms of hopefully firing people up to get involved in politics and women's rights.
And of course the imprisonment, she went to prison, well, she was in prison 7 times, but 6 seriously. She was remanded in prison for 2 or 3 nights for again, heckling Churchill, Winston Churchill, when he came to Preston. But I mean, she went on hunger strike just like the rest, and she was close to death at one point. Many of them were. I mean, they were brave women.
But hopefully it's a story of, an inspirational story. There's some tough subjects that we cover in there, but there's also some lovely light moments. And John's a great lyrical writer, so there's a beauty to the language as well, which as an actor is really good to get something meaty to perform. So hopefully people will learn something and be inspired to take action.
A New York critic came to see this in Edinburgh, and she called it a thrilling tale, and it is. It's fast moving, you know, it doesn't drag its feet, and it covers a lot of events in the life of Edith and the suffragettes. So it's well worth coming to see.
We've done a short tour, haven't we? So we've done we did Barnes in London, we've done one in Nottingham, we've done a few places across the UK, but we really wanted to go on a wider tour, and I think it's the Fringe Festival gives us a great opportunity to showcase it, because new writings, you know, original plays, it's difficult to get placed into venues, because unless you've got someone from EastEnders or, you know, Coronation Street, people aren't generally interested in new work unless there's a famous name attached to it. But once people come and see it, I hope they'll see that it's a really valuable tale that should be told across the UK, really. Yeah. Somebody came from Australia.
She did.
Said that she would go back to Australia.
She said it was inspiring.
Yeah.
She said we should have something like this in Australia, and I thought, well, have this in Australia.
Yeah, we'll come. We did a shorter version in Edinburgh, didn't we? It was a 45, just under 50 minutes. And that was mainly because of the in and out nature of Fringe venues.
But she was getting standing ovations for it. It was very well received.
But it's a 75-minute show now, but there's so much more in there, isn't there, in terms of it's a better show, I think.
I do. I think it's improved it. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, half of the women that got involved from the north of England are unsung. You know, these suffragettes, nobody's heard of them. And I think it's a great way of reacquainting people with their history.
I think as well in theatre today, you know, working class writers and actors are often forgotten. We're left under the kind of radar. We've always, you know, we're 30 years old this year, our company. Yeah. I was only 5 when we started.
So was I.
But we've always wanted to tell the untold stories. We've always wanted to tell ordinary people's stories and lift them to the status of kings and queens. And I think, you know, it's been a struggle. We've never received any revenue funding, and it's a miracle that we're still here. But generally, we've survived because our audiences have recommended us to other people. Yeah. But it's still a hard slog, and I think that a lot of that is to do with where we're from and the kinds of things that we're covering. But we think they're worth covering. I think everybody's story is worth telling, and as long as you tell it well, which John always does.
We make sure that what we do is quality. You know, you spend the time doing it, and it's never wasted, I think. I'm born and bred.
I'm not born and bred from Preston.
She's from Blackpool.
I was born in Blackpool, but I've lived around Lancashire and Wales. But we set up the company in Preston because we met on another show.
We did, yeah.
And a few of us were going to set up, and then we decided that we were going to do it, and that we were just going to do new work. Nobody else's plays, but just original plays.
No.
In all this time, I know.
We've done Edinburgh and the Buxton Fringe.
Yeah.
Which was last year.
So it's our first time for the Fringe, so we're quite excited about that. And it's the first time for the venue that we're at, the Manchester College Waterside, which is not the one in Sale. It's in Manchester. So we're going to make sure that people go to the right place. But it's their first venue, their first time in the Fringe, and our first time. So we're hoping that we can, you know, set it off with a bang, really.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm sure it will.